Welcome to the InnoGuide Podcast, where we share the works of authors and mentors to guide innovation. In episode number 29, we're sharing part 2 of Lies I Taught in Medical School by Robert Lufkin, MD. Chapter 7, The Cardiovascular Disease Lie. Let's talk about heart disease. The number one killer worldwide, and the big lie surrounding it, that statins are a good way to prevent it. This one hits close to home for me because my father followed all the advice. He took statins, ate a low-fat, high-carb diet, and avoided saturated fats. He even trimmed the fat off his meat. But despite all that, he died of a heart attack and stroke, the very thing his medication and diet was supposed to prevent. That's why I'm so passionate about exposing this lie. Too many families are going through the same tragedy, and it doesn't have to be this way. What is cardiovascular disease? Cardiovascular disease, CVD, is a disorder of the blood vessels, and it's responsible for 17.9 million deaths every year. The two most well-known effects of CVD are heart attacks and strokes. A heart attack happens when blood flow to the heart is blocked, causing part of the heart muscle to die. A stroke is similar, but it happens in the brain, where a lack of blood flow causes brain tissue to die. Both are caused by a condition called atherosclerosis, where plaque builds up in the arteries, making them narrow and stiff. The plaque contains cholesterol, and when pieces of it break off, they can block blood flow entirely, leading to these life-threatening events. But while cholesterol is part of the story, it's not the villain we've been led to believe. Here's why. The diet heart hypothesis, a flawed idea. The idea that dietary fat and cholesterol cause heart disease, known as the diet heart hypothesis, has been around for decades. It gained traction in the 50s thanks to researchers like Ansel Keys and the American Heart Association, AHA. They claimed that eating saturated fats and cholesterol raised blood cholesterol levels, which then caused heart disease. This led to the rise of the so-called prudent diet, which replaced traditional foods like butter, lard, and eggs with margarine, seed oils, and low-fat products. But there's a problem. The science behind this hypothesis was flawed from the start. For example, early studies that linked cholesterol to heart disease were done on rabbits, herbivores that don't naturally eat cholesterol. When researchers looked at human populations, they found that heart disease rates didn't always correlate with fat consumption. In fact, heart disease was rare in the early 1900s when people ate more traditional, high-fat diets. Yet as processed foods and seed oils became more common, heart disease rates skyrocketed. Despite these inconsistencies, the diet heart hypothesis stuck, thanks to aggressive marketing and endorsements from organizations like the AHA. Even today, we see cereals and processed foods labeled as heart healthy, often because companies pay for those endorsements. For example, the AHA has endorsed sugary cereals like Cocoa Puffs and Frosted Mini Wheats, as well as high-sodium soups. In Australia, the National Heart Foundation even endorsed McDonald's Filet-O-Fish and Chicken McNuggets at one point. These endorsements show how deeply the food industry has influenced public health messaging. Cholesterol, the misunderstood molecule. Let's talk about cholesterol, specifically LDL, low-density lipoprotein, often called the bad cholesterol. The mainstream view is that high LDL levels increase your risk of heart disease, while high HDL levels, high-density lipoprotein, is protective. This is why statins, which lower LDL, are so widely prescribed. But the truth is that LDL isn't the villain it's made out to be. For starters, studies show that LDL levels don't always predict heart disease risk. For example, a study of over 23,000 patients found no correlation between LDL levels and atherosclerosis, plaque buildup in the arteries. Instead, the real risk factor was the presence of calcified plaque in the arteries, which can be measured with a CT scan. Another study found that 3/4 of heart disease patients had normal LDL levels, so focusing solely on LDL is misleading. The statin scam. Statins are the go-to drug for lowering LDL, and they're incredibly profitable. 1 in 4 Americans over 40 takes a statin. and drug companies make billions from them. But do they actually work? Let's look at the numbers. Take Lipitor, one of the most popular statins. Its ads claim a 30% reduction in heart attack risk. Sounds impressive, right? But here is the catch. That number is based on relative risk reduction, not absolute risk. In the actual study, 3% of people taking a placebo had a heart attack, compared to 1.9% of those taking Lipitor. The absolute risk reduction is just 1.1%. By using relative risk, the drug company can claim a 36% reduction, which sounds much more dramatic. This kind of statistical trickery is common in the drug marketing industry, and it misleads both patients and doctors. What about side effects? Statins are associated with serious issues like muscle pain, diabetes, cognitive impairment, and even cancer. But drug companies downplay these risks by using absolute rates instead of relative rates, making the side effects seem less significant. They also use tricks like run-in periods where patients who experience side effects during the trial are excluded from final results. This makes the drugs look safer than they really are. The real cause of heart disease. Well, if LDL isn't the main culprit, what is? The answer lies in metabolic health. Conditions like insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and hypertension are far more predictive of heart disease than LDL levels. These conditions are all part of metabolic syndrome, which is driven by poor diet and lifestyle choices, especially the overconsumption of sugar and refined carbs. Fructose in particular plays a major role. It's metabolized in the liver where it creates uric acid, which blocks the production of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is crucial for keeping blood vessels flexible and healthy. Without it, blood pressure rises and the risk of heart disease increases. High sugar intake also leads to small, dense LDL particles, SDLDL, which are more dangerous than the large, buoyant LDL particles targeted by statins. Unfortunately, standard cholesterol tests don't distinguish between the two. Another overlooked factor is lipoprotein A, or Lp(a), a generic variant of LDL that's strongly linked to heart disease. Interesting, Lp(a) levels can be reduced by eating more saturated fat and fewer carbs, exactly the opposite of what the prudent diet recommends. The bigger picture. Heart disease isn't just about cholesterol. It's about the health of your blood vessels, which are protected by a thin layer called the endothelial glycocalyx. This layer is easily damaged by sugar, inflammation, and oxidative stress. Once it's compromised, plaque buildup accelerates and the risk of heart disease skyrockets. Protecting the endothelial glycocalyx requires addressing root causes of metabolic syndrome, not just taking pills. The idea that taking statins is the best way to prevent heart disease is a lie. They may have a small benefit for people who've already had a heart attack, but for most people, the risks outweigh the rewards. The real solution lies in improving metabolic health, cutting out the sugar and refined carbs, eating healthy fats, exercising, and managing stress. Heart disease isn't caused by a lack of statins. It's caused by a modern lifestyle that's out of sync with our biology. It's time to stop blaming cholesterol and start addressing the real issues. Chapter 8. The Cancer Lie. Let's talk about cancer, the second leading cause of death worldwide, right behind heart disease. Like heart disease, cancer has been the focus of massive government efforts, from Nixon's War on Cancer in 1971 to Obama's Moonshot Initiative in 2016 and Biden's Moonshot 2.0 in 2022. These programs have poured billions of dollars into research with the hope of curing cancer or at least significantly reducing death rates. But here's the harsh truth. After more than 50 years of effort, we're not much closer to winning this war. Cancer death rates have remained stable, and while there's been some progress in specific areas, overall the picture is grim. So what's going wrong? To understand that, we first need to understand what cancer is and why the way we think about it might be all wrong. Cancer is essentially the uncontrolled growth of cells. Normally, our immune system keeps cell growth in check, but when it fails, cells start multiplying out of control. These rogue cells can form tumors, primary tumor, and even spread to other parts of the body, metastasis, creating secondary tumors in places like the lungs, the liver, or the brain. Cancer cells are also immortal. They don't die like normal cells do after a certain number of replications. Instead, they just keep on dividing endlessly. Famous example of this immortality is the HeLa cells, taken from a woman named Henrietta Lacks in 1951. These cancer cells have been used in countless scientific studies and are still alive today, decades after her death. Cancer is a formidable foe, and its ability to grow, spread, and survive makes it incredibly difficult to treat. The standard treatments? Slash, burn, and poison. For decades, the main treatments for cancer have been surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. These methods are often described as slash, burn, and poison because of how brutal they are on the body. Surgery, the oldest method, where doctors simply cut out the cancer, works well if the cancer hasn't spread. But once it metastasizes, surgery is often ineffective. Radiation. This targets rapidly growing cells like cancer cells, but it also damages healthy cells, such as those in your hair or digestive system. Radiation can even cause new cancers to develop years later. Chemotherapy. This approach also targets fast-growing cells, but it's essentially poisoning the body. Its origins are grim. Chemotherapy was developed after scientists noticed that mustard gas, a chemical weapon, killed cancer cells during World War II. While these treatments have saved lives, they're far from perfect. In fact, decades of using these methods have only saved about 4% of cancer patients. The death rate from cancer has actually increased since 1950, largely due to lifestyle factors like smoking and poor diet. Clearly, we need a better approach. The dominant theory, cancer as a genetic disease. For most of the 20th century, scientists believed that cancer was caused by accumulated DNA damage. This idea, known as the somatic mutation theory, suggests that as we age, our DNA accumulates mutations. Some of these mutations affect cell growth, leading to cancer. This theory gained traction in the 1950s after the discovery of DNA's double helix structure, which shifted the focus of cancer research toward genetics. The somatic mutation theory has led to some breakthroughs, like the discovery of oncogenes, genes that can cause cancer when activated, and tumor suppressor genes, genes that prevent cancer but can lead to it when damaged. For example, the drug Herceptin targets a specific oncogene in breast cancer, and Gleevec targets a genetic mutation in leukemia. These drugs have shown some success, but they're the exception, not the rule. Most cancers don't have a single clear genetic target, and even when they do, the results are often modest. For example, Herceptin only improves survival by about 3% over 4 years. The cracks in genetic theory. While the somatic mutation theory has dominated cancer research, it has some major flaws. For one, not all cancers are linked to DNA mutations. Studies have found that some cancer patients don't have the mutations typically associated with their disease, and some people with those mutations never develop cancer. This suggests that mutations alone aren't enough to explain cancer. There's also Peto's paradox, which points out that larger animals like whales and elephants don't have higher cancer rates than smaller animals, even though they have more cells and should theoretically accumulate more mutations. Elephants, for example, have extra copies of a tumor-suppressing gene called TP53, which helps protect them from cancer. But other long-lived animals, like bowhead whales, don't have these extra genes, yet they still resist cancer. Clearly, there's more to the story than just DNA damage. A new perspective: cancer as a metabolic disease. Before the genetic theory took over, a German scientist named Dr. Otto Warburg proposed a different explanation for cancer. In the 1930s, Warburg discovered that cancer cells process glucose differently than normal cells. Instead of using oxygen to generate energy, a more efficient process, cancer cells rely on fermentation, even when oxygen is available. This is known as the Warburg effect. Warburg believed that cancer was a metabolic disease caused by damaged mitochondria, the energy-producing structures in cells. While his theory was overshadowed by the rise of DNA research, recent evidence suggests that he might have been onto something. For example, experiments have shown that transferring the nucleus, which contains DNA, of a cancer cell into a healthy cell doesn't make the healthy cell cancerous. But transferring the cytoplasm, which contains the mitochondria of a cancer cell, into a healthy cell does make it cancerous. This points to metabolism, not DNA, as the root cause of cancer. The atavistic model, cancer as a reversion to primitive behavior. Another intriguing theory is the atavistic model, which suggests that cancer cells revert to ancient single-celled behaviors when they're stressed. In this view, cancer isn't just a random collection of mutations, it's a survival mechanism. When cells are damaged by chronic stressors like poor nutrition, smoking, or inflammation, they go rogue and start behaving like primitive organisms, prioritizing their own survival over the body's. This theory explains why cancer cells grow uncontrollably, spread, and become immortal. These behaviors helped single-celled organisms survive billions of years ago, but in a multicellular organism like a human, they're disastrous. So what are the known causes of cancer? Cancer is triggered by a variety of stressors, not all of which involve DNA mutations. These include infections. Some viruses and bacteria can cause cancer. Inflammation. Chronic inflammation, such as from smoking, damages cells. Radiation. This can directly mutate DNA. Chemicals. Certain substances like asbestos are carcinogenic. Poor nutrition. While it doesn't directly mutate DNA, it creates the conditions for cancer to thrive. The key is that these stressors are often chronic and sublethal. They don't kill the cell outright, but damage it enough to trigger cancerous behavior. So how do we minimize cancer risk? Best way to fight cancer is to prevent it in the first place, and here's how. Avoid chronic stressors. Quit smoking, limit alcohol, and exposure to harmful chemicals. Fix your diet. Cut out refined carbs and seed oils, which drive inflammation and insulin resistance. Focus on whole, nutrient-dense foods. Stay active. Regular exercise improves metabolic health and reduces cancer risk. Get screened. Early detection is crucial. Don't skip the recommended screenings like colonoscopies. Cancer, like heart disease and diabetes, is closely linked to metabolic health. By addressing the root causes, poor diet, lack of exercise, and chronic inflammation, we can significantly reduce our risk. The time to act is now, before "if only" becomes the story of your life. Chapter 9. The Alzheimer's Lie. Let me tell you about my mother. She developed Alzheimer's late in life, and if you've ever watched a loved one go through dementia, you know how devastating it is. She forgot who I was, who she was, and how to live her life. The best medical care available at the time, the same care offered today, did nothing to help her. The treatment, in quotes, was essentially keeping her in a room and feeding her sugary foods until she passed away. That's it. That's the standard approach. What if I told you it didn't have to be this way? What if I told you there's a way to manage Alzheimer's? Before we get into that, let's break down what we're dealing with. The Alzheimer's epidemic. Alzheimer's disease affects over 5 million Americans, and that number is expected to triple by 2050. It's a progressive condition that destroys brain function, memory and reasoning, and the ability to perform daily tasks. Primarily affects people over 65, and unlike other chronic diseases, there's no effective treatment, none. Billions of dollars have been spent on research, and countless scientists have worked on the problem, but the clinical success rate for Alzheimer's drug trials is nearly zero. Even pharmaceutical giants like Pfizer have given up on developing Alzheimer's drugs. What's worse is that we don't even fully understand what Alzheimer's is. With heart disease, we know it's caused by blocked arteries. With cancer, we know it's uncontrolled cell growth, but with Alzheimer's, all we see is cognitive decline. We can measure how the brain functions, but we don't know why it stops working. And by the time symptoms appear, the disease has already been silently progressing for up to 20 years. The stages of Alzheimer's include these 5 stages. 1. Preclinical. This stage is silent. There are no symptoms, but brain scans may show the presence of beta amyloid plaques, which are thought to be linked to the disease. This stage can last for decades. 2. Mild cognitive impairment, MCI. Memory lapses and difficulty with tasks like time management begins. While MCI is associated with Alzheimer's, not everyone with MCI develops the disease. 3. Mild dementia. At this stage, Alzheimer's is diagnosed. Memory loss worsens, problem solving becomes difficult, and people may get lost in familiar places. 4. Moderate dementia. Memory gaps become severe. People forget where they are, who they're talking to, even their personal history. They may need help with basic tasks like dressing and bathing and can experience mood swings, anger, and hallucinations. 5. Severe dementia. In the final stage, people lose the ability to speak, walk, or care for themselves. They often die from complications like pneumonia, malnutrition, or infections. The progression from the first stage to the last stage can take anywhere from 3 to 20 years, and the effects on the brain are devastating. But what causes this destruction? The most widely accepted explanation is the beta amyloid theory. The beta amyloid theory, a flawed explanation. The beta amyloid theory suggests that Alzheimer's is caused by the buildup of beta amyloid plaques in the brain. These plaques disrupt communications between the neurons, while another protein, tau, forms tangles inside neurons, further damaging brain function. Together, these plaques and tangles are thought to cause the memory loss and cognitive decline seen in Alzheimer's. This theory has been dominated by Alzheimer's research for decades, but there are some major problems with it. First, plaques don't always cause symptoms. Studies have found that many people with beta amyloid plaques in their brains don't develop Alzheimer's or experience cognitive decline. Second, Alzheimer's can occur without plaques. Some people with Alzheimer's symptoms don't have significant plaque buildup. 3. Failed treatments. Drugs targeting amyloid beta have consistently failed to slow or reverse the disease. And 4. Fraudulent research. A 2006 study linking beta amyloid to Alzheimer's was recently found to contain falsified data, casting further doubt on the theory. While beta amyloid plaques and tau tangles are associated with Alzheimer's, they may not be the root cause. So what is? Alternative theories and causes of Alzheimer's. It's becoming clear that Alzheimer's doesn't have a single cause. Instead, it's likely the result of multiple factors, including the following. Number 1, toxins. Mercury and lead. These heavy metals can cause cognitive impairment. Mercury exposure from seafood or dental fillings and lead exposure from the environment are both linked to memory problems. Mold. Toxic mold exposure has been shown to cause cognitive decline, and treating mold toxicity can sometimes reverse memory issues. Pesticides. These can damage the brain, and avoiding them by eating organic foods may help reduce risk. 2. Infection and inflammation. Viruses like herpes and hepatitis C, as well as bacteria from gum disease, have been linked to Alzheimer's. Chronic inflammation can damage brain tissue, especially if the blood-brain barrier, which protects the brain, is compromised. 3. Head trauma. Traumatic brain injuries, TBIs, even mild ones, increase the risk of Alzheimer's. This is especially true for athletes in contact sports like football or boxing. And 4. Air pollution. Poor air quality, including exposure to nitrous oxides and carbon monoxide, has been linked to cognitive decline and dementia. While these factors contribute to Alzheimer's, the most compelling link is with metabolic disease. The metabolic connection, Alzheimer's as type 3 diabetes. Alzheimer's is often referred to as type 3 diabetes because of its strong connection to metabolic dysfunction. The brain relies heavily on glucose for energy, but in Alzheimer's patients, glucose metabolism in the brain is impaired. This is similar to the insulin resistance seen in type 2 diabetes, and studies show that 70% of people with type 2 diabetes go on to develop Alzheimer's. Dr. Mary Newport, whose husband had Alzheimer's, experimented with a ketogenic, low-carb diet and coconut oil to improve his brain function. The results were remarkable. He regained some of his cognitive abilities. This approach was later supported by a small clinical trial which found that a ketogenic diet improved daily function and quality of life in Alzheimer's patients. Other metabolic factors like mitochondrial dysfunction and high levels of uric acid caused by fructose metabolism also play a role. Uric acid inhibits nitric oxide, which is crucial for brain health, and this connection links Alzheimer's to other metabolic conditions like heart disease and diabetes. A new approach to treating Alzheimer's. One promising approach comes from Dr. Dale Bredesen. who developed a comprehensive program to address the many factors contributing to Alzheimer's. His protocol includes 5 things: eliminating toxins, correcting nutritional deficiencies, following a ketogenic diet, exercising regularly, using supplements like coconut oil and melatonin. Bredeson's program has shown success in reversing cognitive decline in some patients, but it's not a cure-all. Critics argue that more research is needed, but his work highlights the importance of addressing Alzheimer's as a multifactorial disease. Dr. Dale Bredeson's book is entitled The End of Alzheimer's. It's a good book. The bottom line here, the idea that Alzheimer's is caused solely by beta amyloid plaques is a lie. The disease is far more complex, with multiple contributing factors including toxins, infections, head trauma, air pollution, and most importantly, metabolic dysfunction. Like heart disease and diabetes, Alzheimer's is closely tied to poor metabolic health, and addressing these underlying issues is key to prevention and treatment. While we don't yet have a cure, progress is being made. By focusing on lifestyle changes like improving diet, reducing sugar, and avoiding toxins, we can reduce our risk and potentially slow the progression of this devastating disease. The fight against Alzheimer's is far from over, but with each new discovery, we're getting closer to saving memories and lives. Chapter 10. The Mental Health Lie. Let's talk about mental health and the big lie we've been told, that metabolism has little to do with it. Spoiler alert, it has everything to do with it. But before we dive into that, let's set the stage. A brief history of mental health understanding. Back in 1835, Charles Darwin was exploring South America. Photography was just being invented, and the first ever medical article linking physical and mental health was published. Fast forward to today, and we know mental health is crucial to overall wellness. But mental health issues are skyrocketing. Depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia are all on the rise, and the medical community still doesn't fully understand why. Unlike other diseases like cardiovascular disease or diabetes, where we have clear mechanisms and metaphors like clogged pipes and faulty insulin signaling, mental disease remains a mystery. We don't even have good metaphors to describe them. What's the metaphor for depression? Schizophrenia. We're still in the dark. The current model of mental health. The dominant model for understanding mental health is a biopsychosocial model, which considers biological, psychological, and social factors. It's a decent framework, but it's far from perfect. For years, we've heard about the chemical imbalance theory, that mental illness is caused by chemical imbalances in the brain. Pharmaceutical companies loved this idea because it helped sell drugs, but there was never a solid scientific theory behind it. It was more of a marketing tool than a medical breakthrough. That said, biology does play a role in mental illness, but it's not the whole story. Social factors like poverty and stress, as well as psychological factors, are just as important. And while this model gives us a way to think about mental health, it hasn't led to effective treatments. The sad reality is that most mental health treatments, whether they're drugs, therapy, or even brain stimulation, don't work very well. For example, only 4% of people with schizophrenia achieve recovery, and 1/3 of people with major depression don't respond to any treatment. The role of metabolism in mental health. Here's where things get interesting. What if mental health illnesses are actually metabolic disorders of the brain? This idea, championed by psychiatrist Christopher Palmer in his book Brain Energy, suggests that many mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, and even schizophrenia are linked to metabolic dysfunction. Let's look at the evidence. Mental illnesses are often associated with metabolic diseases like obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. For example, obesity is linked to higher rates of mood disorders like depression and bipolar disorder. People with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder often become obese after their first hospitalization. Depression is 25% more common in people with diabetes, and people with schizophrenia are 3 times more likely to develop diabetes. Cardiovascular disease is more common in people with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and depression. Even life expectancy is affected. Mental illnesses like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder can shorten life by 10 to 30 years, and the leading cause of death? Diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancer are all metabolic diseases. Metabolic therapy, a new hope. So if mental illnesses are tied to metabolic dysfunction, could metabolic therapies help? The answer seems to be yes, and one of the most promising approaches is the ketogenic diet. This diet, which is high in fat and low in carbs, mimics fasting and has been used for decades to treat epilepsy. Now researchers are exploring its potential for mental health. Here's what we know so far. The ketogenic diet and mental illness. A small study in France put psychiatric patients with conditions like bipolar disorder, depression, and schizophrenia on a strict ketogenic diet. The results were remarkable. 96% of patients reported symptom improvement, 44% achieved clinical remission, and more than half were able to reduce their medications. Ketogenic diet and depression. Studies show that weight loss, often a result of keto, improves depression. In animal studies, ketogenic diet has shown antidepressant effects, and early human trials are underway. Ketogenic diet and alcohol use disorder. Alcohol use disorder is linked to brain glucose metabolism issues. A ketogenic diet helps maintain brain energy without alcohol, reducing withdrawal symptoms and the need for medications during detox. While the data is still limited, the results are promising. The ketogenic diet could offer a new way to treat mental illnesses, especially for people who don't respond to traditional therapies. The bigger picture, metabolism and behavior. Here's a wild thought. Could metabolic dysfunction also affect behavior, like aggression and violence? One study found that teens who drank a lot of soda were more likely to carry weapons and act violently, even after accounting for other factors like sleep and alcohol use. While this doesn't prove causation, it raises an intriguing question. Could sugary diets and metabolic disruption contribute to societal issues like violence? If so, a ketogenic diet might not just improve mental health, it could also promote a more peaceful society. A cautious optimism. Before you jump into a ketogenic diet, a word of caution. Mental health conditions are complex, and psychiatric medications can interfere with glucose metabolism. Starting a ketogenic diet without medical supervision could be dangerous. If you're considering this approach, consult a healthcare professional first. That said, the potential of metabolic therapy is enormous. By addressing the metabolic roots of mental illness, we could revolutionize treatment, offering hope to millions of people who have been failed by traditional approaches. It's time to challenge the lie that metabolism has little to do with mental health and embrace a future where we treat the brain and body as one interconnected system. This chapter is a call to rethink everything we know about mental health. By focusing on metabolism, we might finally unlock the answers we've been searching for and create a healthier, happier world in the process. Chapter 11, The Longevity Lie. Let's talk about aging. For the longest time, I believed what most doctors still do, that chronic diseases like heart disease, cancer, and Alzheimer's are just natural consequences of getting older. But I don't believe that anymore. Aging isn't just some inevitable wear and tear process. It's something we can understand, slow down, maybe even reverse. And if we can do that, we can tackle the biggest risk factor for almost every chronic disease, aging itself. Why focus on aging? Aging is the single greatest risk factor for most diseases. It's not the smoking that's the biggest risk factor for lung cancer, it's aging. Even if you've never smoked a day in your life, your risk of lung cancer increases as you get older. And curing cancer or heart disease would only add a few years to the average lifespan. But if we could slow down aging itself, we could add decades of healthy life. The goal isn't just to live longer, it's to live better. We want to increase our health span, the number of good years that we have in good health, not just our lifespan. Nobody wants to spend an extra 10 years in a nursing home. The idea is to square the mortality curve, meaning we stay healthy and active for as long as possible. And then when the time comes, we go quickly and painlessly. That's the dream, right? The wear and tear myth. Most people think of aging as a car breaking down over time, accumulated damage from years of use. This idea, called the wear and tear hypothesis, has been the dominant model for decades. It suggests that aging is caused by random molecular damage, like DNA replication errors, or oxidative stress from free radicals. And while there's some truth to this, it's not the whole story. Living organisms don't just wear out like machines. In fact, many aspects of aging are programmed. For example, cells in our bodies are programmed to die in a process called apoptosis. This is a good thing. It keeps our bodies functioning properly by getting rid of damaged, unnecessary cells. But what if this programming extends to the entire organism? What if aging itself is at least in part a programmed process? Programmed aging, the evidence. Let's look at some fascinating examples. In a tiny worm called C. elegans, scientists discovered that its cells are programmed to die at specific times during its development. This isn't random, it's highly controlled. And when researchers mutated certain genes in these worms, they were able to double their lifespan. The key gene involved? One that regulates insulin and a growth factor called IGF-1. This same pathway is linked to aging in flies, mice, and even humans. And then there's the immortal jellyfish, which can reverse its aging process and essentially live forever. If aging were just about wear and tear, how could this be possible? Clearly, there's more to the story. The hyperfunction theory of aging. Here's where things get really interesting. A newer theory called the hyperfunction theory suggests that aging isn't caused by a decline in function, but by too much function. Early in life, our cells and our systems are focused on growth and reproduction, but later in life, these same processes keep running even when they're no longer needed, and they start to cause problems. Think of it like leaving a pot on a stove after the water has boiled away. It's useful at first, but if you don't turn off the heat, the pot gets damaged. This overactivity, driven by pathways like mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin, mTOR, leads to the chronic diseases of aging, cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and more. These aren't random breakdowns. They're the result of growth programs running amok. Rapamycin, the anti-aging wonder drug. So if mTOR activation drives aging, what happens if we turn it down? Enter rapamycin, a drug that inhibits mTOR. It's the most effective anti-aging drug we've discovered so far. Originally found in soil samples from Easter Island, rapamycin was first used as an antifungal and later as an immunosuppressant for organ transplants. But researchers soon realized it had incredible anti-aging properties. In mice, rapamycin has been shown to extend the lifespan by up to 60%, and improve health span. It delays or even reverses every age-related disease it's been tested on, including cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and even wrinkles. In humans, it's already being used off-label for anti-aging purposes, and early studies are promising. Here are 4 examples. Periodontal disease. In mice, rapamycin reversed gum disease, regenerating bone and reducing inflammation. Skin aging. A topical rapamycin cream reduced wrinkles and inflammation in a human trial. Hearing loss. In mice, rapamycin delayed age-related hearing loss. Menopause. In mice, rapamycin extended reproductive lifespan, and researchers are now exploring its potential to delay menopause in women. Chronic diseases of aging. While rapamycin shows promise for reversing the visible signs of aging, it's the chronic diseases of aging that really determine longevity. These include heart disease, where rapamycin has been shown to improve heart function in aging mice and even prevent artery blockages when used on stents. Cancer, rapamycin slows cancer growth by stopping cells from dividing. It's already FDA approved in certain cancers. And Alzheimer's, in mouse models, rapamycin reduced the buildup of harmful proteins in the brain and improved cognitive function. Lifestyle versus drugs. Now you might be thinking, should I just start taking rapamycin? Not so fast. While rapamycin is incredibly promising, it's not a magic pill. High doses can have side effects like suppressing the immune system, and we still don't fully understand how it works. Plus, rapamycin alone won't fix a bad lifestyle. If you're eating junk food, not exercising, and living a high-stress life, no drug is going to save you. The truth is, lifestyle changes like eating a healthy diet, exercising, and managing stress are still the foundation of longevity. Rapamycin and other drugs might enhance these efforts, but they're not a substitute. The big picture is this. Aging isn't just an inevitable process of wear and tear. It's driven by metabolic and growth pathways that we can influence. By targeting these pathways through lifestyle changes, drugs like rapamycin, or both, we can potentially extend not just our lifespan, but our health span. Imagine living into your 90s or even hundreds, not in a nursing home, but healthy, active, and independent. The key is to start now. As entrepreneur Seth Godin says, if you wait until you're ready, you're almost sure to be too late. The sooner you take control of your health, the longer and better you'll live. And in the next chapter, we'll dive into practical strategies for reducing mTOR and improving your longevity. No prescription required. Stay tuned. Chapter 12. The Plan. Let's face it, modern medicine is failing us when it comes to chronic diseases. We've been taught to rely on pills and procedures, but the truth is many of these diseases, diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, even aging itself, are rooted in metabolic dysfunction. And these conditions are largely preventable and even reversible with simple lifestyle changes. That's what this chapter is all about, the plan. Not a magic pill or quick fix, but a practical, science-based approach to taking control of your health. Seed versus soil, a tale of two theories. To understand why modern medicine struggles with chronic diseases, we need to revisit an old debate, seed theory versus soil theory. Seed theory, also known as germ theory, focuses on the seeds of disease, pathogens like bacteria and viruses. It's great for infectious diseases like polio or tuberculosis, where the cause is clear and the solution, like antibiotics or vaccines, is straightforward. But when it comes to chronic diseases, seed theory falls short. These conditions aren't caused by a simple pathogen. Instead, they're the result of a complex interplay of factors like inflammation, insulin resistance, and metabolic dysfunction. This is where soil theory comes in. Soil theory focuses on the terrain, the health of the body itself. It suggests that a healthy body, the soil, is less likely to develop disease even when exposed to harmful seeds. Here's an example. Why does COVID-19 cause mild symptoms in some people but kill others? The difference lies in the soil, the overall health of the person. Age, metabolic health, and inflammation levels play a huge role in determining outcomes. The same is true for chronic diseases. If we focus on improving the soil, our overall health, we can prevent and even reverse many of these conditions. The plan, a holistic approach to health. So how do we improve the soil? That's where the plan comes. It's a three-part strategy that focuses on nutrition, lifestyle, and deeper interventions to optimize your health and longevity. Let's break it down. Part 1. Nutrition. Nutrition is the most powerful tool we have for improving health. It's something we do every day, and it has a profound impact on our metabolism, inflammation, and overall well-being. But with so much conflicting advice out there, it's hard to know where to start. Here's the plan I recommend. 1. When to eat. The first step doesn't even require changing what you eat, just when you eat. Our ancestors didn't snack all day. They ate intermittently, which allowed their bodies to rest and burn fat for fuel. You can mimic this by narrowing your eating window. For example, eat within an 8-hour window, like noon to 8 p.m. Avoid snacking and stick to 1 to 2 meals per day. Try intermittent fasting, like skipping breakfast, or even fasting for 24 to 48 hours occasionally. Studies show that simply narrowing your eating window can lead to weight loss, lower blood pressure, and improved metabolic health. Even dogs fed once a day are healthier than those fed multiple times. 2. What to eat. When it comes to food, the goal is simple. Avoid processed junk and focus on whole nutrient-dense food. Here's what to avoid. Sugar and refined carbs. These drive insulin resistance, inflammation, and chronic disease. Seed oils, the hateful eight, like canola, soybean, and corn oil, are high in omega-6 fats, which promote inflammation. Grains and gluten. These can cause inflammation and gut issues, even in people without celiac disease. Instead, focus on whole pre-agricultural foods, what I call the PAW plan, pre-agricultural whole foods. Think meat, fish, eggs, vegetables, nuts, and healthy fats like olive oil and butter. Whether you're vegan, vegetarian, or carnivore, the key is to avoid processed foods. 3. How much to eat? Here's the good news. If you follow the above steps, your appetite will naturally regulate itself. Without the blood sugar spikes and crashes caused by refined carbs, you'll feel full and satisfied after meals. There's no need to count calories. Just eat until you're full. Bonus tips. Don't drink your calories. Avoid fruit juices and sugary drinks. Even diet sodas can stimulate insulin and promote fat storage. Eat carbs last. Start meals with protein and fat to reduce blood sugar spikes. Part 2. Other lifestyle factors. Nutrition is the foundation, but it's not the whole picture. To truly optimize your health, you'll need to address other key factors. Number 1, stress. Chronic stress wreaks havoc on your metabolism, increasing cortisol and inflammation. One simple way to reduce stress: get a pet. Studies show that pets can lower stress levels and even improve longevity. My dog, Butter, has been a game changer for my own stress levels. 2. Sleep. Poor sleep disrupts hormones that regulate hunger and metabolism, making it harder to lose weight and stay healthy. Aim for 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep per night. Tips for better sleep include sticking to a regular schedule, avoiding screens before bed, and creating a relaxing bedtime routine. Exercise. Exercise is like medicine. Too little is harmful, but so is too much. Find a balance that works for you. Strength training and cardio are both important, but don't overdo it. Set goals and track your progress to stay motivated. And 4, brain health. Keep your brain sharp by learning new skills like a language or a musical instrument. I've been learning Mandarin on Duolingo for 1,300 days, and it's been a great way to challenge my mind. Part 3. Deeper dive and biohacking. For those who want to go further, these are advanced tools and strategies to optimize health and longevity. First is lab tests. Track key biomarkers like blood sugar, cholesterol, and inflammation. You can order these tests yourself or work with a doctor. Regular testing helps you spot problems early and track your progress. 2. Biological clocks. Tools like epigenetic clocks can measure your biological age, how old your body really is, versus your chronological age. These tests can help you see the impact of your lifestyle changes. 3. Fasting mimicking diet. If fasting sounds too hard, try the fasting mimicking diet, FMD. It mimics the benefits of fasting while allowing you to eat small amounts of food. Studies show it can improve insulin resistance, reduce inflammation, and even reverse diabetes. 4. Supplements. Certain supplements like allulose, a natural sugar alternative, and nitric oxide boosters can support metabolic health. For more advanced options, drugs like rapamycin and metformin show promise for longevity, but they should be used under medical supervision. What happened to me? I used to be overweight, pre-diabetic, and on medication for high blood pressure and cholesterol. But by following this plan, cutting out the sugar, processed foods and grains, and adopting intermittent fasting, I reversed all of these conditions. I no longer need medication, and my blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol are all in the healthy range. This isn't just theory, it works. Closing thoughts? If you've made it this far, congratulations. You've learned that metabolic dysfunction is at the root of most chronic diseases, and now you have the tools to take control of your health. Remember, prevention is always better than treatment. Every meal, every choice is an opportunity to live better and live longer. The question is, what will you choose? Your health is in your hands. Start today. So that's it. This has been Lies I Taught in Medical School by Dr. Robert Lufkin. Thanks for joining us. That's a wrap.